Hi and hello! My name is Cass and welcome to my channel where I read a lot of books and I talk about them. The end of Pride Month has arrived, which is a shame, but hey, we're queer every month of the year and we should always celebrate that. But this month I read 12 books, so let's sit down and chat about them. Now, I did start the month reading the second book in the Nightborn duology, but I talked about that in my last wrap-up, so I won't be revisiting that here. We're just moving straight on to the next one. So I started this month off with a brand new release that I had pre-ordered, Shattered Gods by Katie Robert. This is the final book in the Dark Olympus series, which unfortunately means that I can't talk about it a lot in terms of plot. In fact, for a long time, it actually wasn't even released who the main couple was. All we knew is that it was a triad, and one of them was the character of Hermes, who had been like flitting in and out of all of the books up until that point. But the names have been out for a while, so I'm not really worried about spoiling that specifically. The short and non-spoiler version of this is that it features Hermes, Circe, and Atlantia as they navigate the culmination of everything that has brought them to this point and finding their way to each other in the process. I know that's super short, but I am trying to maintain spoilers as much as I can. I, of course, loved this book. It's the culmination of an entire series I love very much. Some books were more misses, but I still liked them all, and honestly, I think the final book did a really good job of balancing like the plot and the relationship. A couple books in the series like really struggled with that, but this one went well. I'm happy overall with the ending, and I'm glad for that. It is the end of one of the series that got me back into reading, so it's a little sad, but overall, still happy. I gave this book 4.5 stars. Next up, I began my so-called dystopian series, aka the 3 classic dystopian novels that I never read when I was younger. We kicked it off with Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. Out of the 3, this is the one that I had never heard of before my dad mentioned it to me when he recommended these 3 books. He was the one who said I should read these classic dystopian books since I never read them in school. Honestly, this book was kind of odd to me. I understood some of the things it was trying to say, but others not so much. A lot of that I'm sure comes from it being written like over 90 years ago. But this book is about the supposed utopia the world now lives in, where the government genetically engineers babies in test tubes to be exactly what they have assigned them to be. Before birth, everyone is assigned a class and made to be a certain way as a result. The story follows a few people as they live in this world where deep emotions are like all but illegal and short-term pleasure is the key to happiness. Like I said, this book is odd. Eugenics is the obvious theme, of course, but there's also a lot of seeming criticism of non-monogamy and a character introduced who did not grow up indoctrinated by the society who seems to take the complete opposite view, that you must suffer to justify your existence. And a good dose of pretty bad misogyny sprinkled in there. Some of it comes from the time, I'm sure, but it very much felt funky. I gave this book a 4-star, though admittedly I've been rethinking my rating for this one, but I'm not sure. Then I picked up 1984 by George Orwell. Y'all, this was a rough read for me. I just could not get into it. I actually had to take a break from it to read Fahrenheit 451 and Bloody Chamber and Other Stories just to finish something and to take a break from this book. So 1984 is pretty well known in terms of pop culture, but the book is about a man who lives in a world under the watchful eye of the Party and Big Brother, a fascist dictatorship where everything is tightly controlled. He finds small ways to rebel over time, even as he toes that line. It's basically like the complete opposite of Brave New World. There's actually, in my copy of Brave New World, there is a few things in the back, but also a letter from Huxley to George Orwell discussing how Huxley feels that the world is, like the future is different in his interpretation of dystopia than George Orwell's in 1984. So that's interesting. Unfortunately, I just did not like this book. I don't know why it was so difficult for me to get through, but the protagonist is just so deeply unlikable. The plot was slow and mostly just boring, and the ending sequence was just... yeah, I didn't love it. I can't go into much more detail without spoiling it. Overall, just wasn't an enjoyable read for me, but I'm glad I read it regardless. It is a classic for a reason, even if it didn't particularly speak to me. I gave it 3 stars. Our final book in this little series, as it were, is Fahrenheit 451. Out of the 3, I'd say I enjoyed this one the most. It was the shortest of the 3, and I honestly think that benefited it a lot. Of course, this book is about a fireman who, in this New World Order, burns books instead of putting out fires. All books have been banned, and instead people basically just watch TV. Our main character is forced to confront the truth of what he's doing by burning books after meeting his new young neighbor, and he starts to just rethink everything. This one really kept to its messaging. It didn't get too wrapped up in much else. That being said, it was a little infuriating to watch all the really bad decisions that Guy just keeps making, one right after the other, without seemingly thinking of the consequences at all. I get that he's running blind in a lot of ways and he doesn't understand necessarily. It's just one after the other. It just keeps happening. It's really rough. But nonetheless, I gave this book 4 stars and it was my favorite of the 3. And now I want to talk a little bit about something that I didn't love about all 3 of these books, and namely that it's the treatment of women. The answer is the treatment of women. I don't know how much of it is a product of the time they were all written, because all of them were written 90 something years ago. I don't know how much of it was the author's individual views and how much of it was intentional to make a point. But I did not love it. There are only 2 female characters of any importance in Fahrenheit 451. One being a literal vehicle for Guy to rebel and figure out that he should be rebelling, and the other being his wife, who only exists to complain about wanting to watch shows, and then an attempt to kill herself in the beginning that doesn't super get talked about a lot. It affects Guy, but she doesn't seem to even remember it, or she's pretending not to remember it, and he's just kind of man, that was really freaky. Anyway, nonetheless, the women in that book just kind of serve to drive Guy to rebel. And his wife ends up being the one to betray him in the end, which is something. Meanwhile, the main character of 1984, Winston, just has disgusting thoughts about women all the time around him. This seems to possibly be intentional because he's clearly not a good person, but it's still something to note, especially when you compare it to the other 2. All 3 of these books did this. That cannot be a coincidence. And then, finally, you've got Brave New World. And it's 2 named female characters that, are kind of leads. It treats them pretty badly, too. There's the slut-shaming of Lenina, the, awful way they talk about John's mother. It was just weird. Not great. Didn't love it. I don't know why all 3 of these seem to have a similar treatment of women, but I didn't love that. Anyway, rant over. I'm off my soapbox for now. Let's move on to our next book that takes a feminist gothic horror twist to many fairy tales. That's right. Next, we have The Bloody Chamber and Other Stories by Angela Carter. This is a short story collection of fairy tale retellings with gothic or horror twists, and they mostly feature women who figure out how to survive and make the best of the things themselves. I really liked this book. It was a quick read, another one I read while trying to get through 1984. It was a good one. As with most short story collections, there were some hits and some misses, but mostly hits on this one. There was one story in particular that really made me raise an eyebrow, but it was also, I'm pretty sure, the shortest story. It was only 2 pages. I do think it was interesting that a few of these stories were clearly retelling the same fairy tale, but in different ways. That's not a criticism, that's not bad at all. It was honestly intriguing to see the different ways that one author can tell the same story. Honestly, because it's a short story collection, it's hard to talk in any real depth about any of it without spoiling the stories. So I'll leave it at that. I gave this book 4.5 stars. A little break away from my TBR for this month, I read The Scum Villain Self-Saving System by MXTX. This is the same author as Heavenly Official's Blessing, which I adored so much. It's currently #1 on my books of the year. Being MXTX's first series, it's a lot shorter than Heaven Official's, but it's still really good. As you can see, I'm using the art book for my books. It's not because I own all 4 of the hardback, the pretty hardbacks, but do you know how much of a pain it is to hold that up? And this is so much smaller, and it's got art from the things. It's actually got all the art from the books, so it's like holding all the books in one. This series is about, and I apologize in advance for any mispronunciation, I am doing my best, but this series is about Shen Yuan. He is a young man who is a passionate reader of a harem web novel. However, he's passionate about how much he hates it. When he reads the final chapter, he gets so angry he literally dies, and he's transmigrated into the body of the main villain of the novel, Shen Jingchu, towards the beginning of the novel. Once he's stuck there, he desperately tries to avoid his own future death at the hands of the protagonist, Liu Binghe. And because this is Danmei, they do eventually fall in love. While Heaven Officials is my absolute favorite Danmei I've read so far, which my consumption is limited so far, I am working to fix this. This is only the second series I've actually read. I am in possession of 3 more, at least the first books of those 3. So I'm working on it. Anyway, this one was pretty good. It is hilarious. It's very comedic because Shen Kinku, he has like crazy commentary in his own head. It's fantastic. All this terrible shit is happening to this guy, and this man is just like, the protagonist, so amazing, so powerful. Like, dude, please just admit that you were in love with him. I am begging you. Binghe is definitely kind of psychotic as a love interest, but I generally have no problem with that as long as it's done correctly. Overall, I really enjoyed this series. The extras were hit or miss for me. Actually, a new extra has like just been released, so I did read that one online through a fan translation. It was a riot. It was fantastic. I understand, obviously it has just released, so there's no way for it to be in the copies that I got, but gosh, I wish it had been. Anyway, I do highly recommend this one. I gave most of the series 4 stars. It was the extras book that I ended up giving a 4.5 star. And now we're back with my usual flavor, a duology. A Tempest of Tea and A Steeping of Blood by Hafsa Faisal. These 2 books are about Arthi Casimir. She is a young immigrant woman who runs a tea house that doubles as a blood house at night for local vampires. When her tea house comes under threat, she is forced to commit a heist to keep it and her found family safe. Well, that is the summary given for the first book. This duology is a lot more than that. It talks about colonialism, the struggle of being an immigrant, racial relationships, both literally, as Arthi is from an island country that has been, colonialized, and also the figurative racism in terms of vampires, because vampires are discriminated against and they are turned into scapegoats throughout like the whole thing. There's a lot of themes going on in this book, and I think generally they're done very well. The story was generally very engaging. I liked all the characters and their growth throughout the books. The rebellion was pretty believable, and I didn't hand-wave any of the big issues that it was tackling. That being said, I didn't love the ending for a few reasons. And there were some really baffling choices made at the end that I didn't like. Despite that, overall I enjoyed it. It was a good read. I gave the first book 4 stars, and I gave the second 3.75 stars. And finally for the month, I read Rouge by Mona Awad, my first Mona Awad book. Man, reading this book was a trip and a half. It messed me up a little, but like in a good way. Rouge is about Belle. She is a young woman who is obsessed with skincare, resulting from a childhood of being influenced by her also skincare obsessed mother. When her mother dies, Belle returns to California to handle her affairs, and she stumbles upon the cult-like spa that her mom was a part of. Like I said, this book was weird. like, kind of trippy. Like, what the actual hell am I reading weird? That being said, it also had me, like, captivated. I couldn't stop reading. I had to know what was happening next, and it's weird. Wow, it's weird. That's what I've got for you. Don't go into this book expecting answers for everything it introduces to you, because you will not get it. It does not give it to you. Which, for someone like me who really likes answers, that's a little annoying, but at the end of the day, that's not the point. Overall, I liked its themes on vanity and beauty and how society trains women to become obsessed with their looks. The spa is pretty emblematic of the beauty industry as a whole. If this is what Mona Owa typically rates, I'm looking forward to how trippy Bunny is gonna be. I gave this book 4.5 stars. And there is all the books that I read this month. So let's talk favorite and least favorite. My favorite was, of course, the Scum Villain Self-Saving System. Listen, I'm getting very into Danmei. I'm starting a lot, like I said, I'm starting a lot of series in that genre. I've got like the first of 2 series and then 2 of another series just waiting to go if I can just get through my TBR fast enough in the month. This one, but anyway, Self-Saving System was just especially so funny. It was a fun mix of like serious moments and comedy, and seeing how Shin Ching-chu was going to get himself out of his newest crazy thing that has happened to him. The main couple is weird and wild together, and I love them and all their silly shenanigans. Overall, just a fantastic series. As for least favorite, I think we all can guess. That would have to go to 1984. Guys, I hated this book. I just hated it. I was sorely tempted to quit quite a few times, but I am nothing if not stubborn, and I pressed forward. It just felt boring. The main character was unlikable and boring, and I didn't feel a real connection to any of the characters. Just did not have a good time with this book, unfortunately. With that done, let's move on to the top 10. Did any books make it to the top 10 this month? Just one. Let's take a look at the list from last month. So, starting out at number 10 last month, we had A Theory of Dreaming, Half a Soul, A Study in Drowning, In the Dream House, Iron Widow, The Shepherd King Duology, Word Slut, the Hierarchy series, A Stage Set for Villains, and at number 1, Heaven Official's Blessing. So, like I said, there has been an upset of 1. So now at number 10, we have Half a Soul, which has displaced the second book in the A Study of Drowning series. However, the first book, A Study in Drowning, is still at number 9. At number 8, we have In the Dream House. At number 7, we have the Iron Widow series. At number 6, we have the Shepherd King Duology. At number 5 now, we have the Scum Villain Self-Saving System. At number 4, we have Word Slut. At number 3, we have the Hierarchy series. At number 2, we have A Stage Set for Villains. And, still holding the number 1 spot, we have Heaven Official's Blessing. And with that, that's the end of our June wrap-up. Thanks for hanging out with me as we talked about this month's reads. Leave a comment if you want to chat more about books. And as always, I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye!